Hello, everybody. Today we have a very special person with us. As I told you earlier, he is a Western astrologer. His name is Mr. Athen Chimenti. So today he is going to talk us about moon basically, but he will be talking more about psychology, how moon is connected with the psychology, and other planets are what other planets indicating in astrology, and how we can use astrology as a good tool to control our mind and understand ourselves and people around us. So welcome, Aten. So our viewers are very eager to listen from you because we Indians more focus on Vedic astrology. So the Western ideas, as a astrologer, I started with Western astrology. I think most of the astrologers they started with Western astrology. It is more easy to understand and it is very easy to apply in our life also. So I hope you will give us a lot of insights. And thanks for coming to my channel.
I'll do my best. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, Jay. I appreciate it.
So today, what we have to, what are your points? I mean, what all things you would like to share with my viewers?
Yeah. So somewhat from the Western background,
Okay.
but more in terms of the Jungian psychology side of it. So Jungian psychology tends to break things down into sort of duality.
Okay.
So you have like in this example, when I look at the moon, it's very important for me to also look at the sun at the same time. So the moon would be the yin side of our psychology. The sun would be the yang. And of course, both of these, are extremely important. So pretty much in both Vedic and Western, we're going to give a lot of weight, emphasis to the sun and moon, right? And this is very much evident in the sky. Like they're pretty much the same size, which is very interesting, even though they're arguably different distances away. It just so happens that they're the same size. And obviously the largest luminaries, right? So that largest part of our personality. Some would say that if you only looked at the sun and moon, you'd get like 80%, of the personality, right? So from that kind of yin yang perspective, so you have the moon, which is the yin. So it's all the things that we're more inward and deals more with our inner psychology and our inner world. And then with the sun, it's going to be more of what you're outwardly focused on. And this makes sense too, because like the sun is shining those rays of light. So it's kind of the conscious outer awareness. It shines light on the world. We get to see things. And then at night, when we go to sleep, usually the moon is more visible. And then you have the sun rays bouncing off of the moon, which is more yin. So the moon is receiving, right? Receiving light energy and then bouncing it back, right? So in this concept, then what we would say here is then that the moon is more of the inner world, right? So we would talk about more of like the inward feelings of things. Usually the things we keep more private and more personal, right? Whereas the sun is the stuff we're just expressing. It's more of the things we're passionate about, we're excited about, and there really is no stopping that, right? The sun is just going to shine no matter what, and it can be quite fierce when it shines, whereas the moon is more concerned about, protecting and connecting to what matters most, spirituality, this kind of more inward fulfillment type of stuff, right?
That's why moon is known as the mother. In Vedic astrology, there's a concept that planetary cabinet. Like in that planetary cabinet, sun is the king, moon is the queen.
Yes, exactly. And that's the yin feminine of the moon and the masculine yang of the sun, right? So then from this, we can start to get a lot of information, right? So if the moon is your inner world, we could just say simply that it is the side of you that comes through more, let's say at home or with family, right? More in our private life. So if you are reading, say, the sign in the house placement of the moon, this is usually going to be the more private self, the side that comes through at home, right? So from there, you can see that this is the self that needs to be nurtured, though, because you could say it's kind of like the side that needs to be protected. You could say it's our inner child, that needs to feel safe, right? So the moon can come out if there's good, strong emotional security. The moon can come out in the external world, but it's usually going to be when the person feels secure or when they're with someone they're very tied to emotionally and they feel safe, right? So this kind of a thing. Yeah. Now, because of this too, there's security at some times. For all of us, it's usually we feel secure sometimes and then we feel insecure other times. So this goes with the fact that the yin energy of the moon is always going up and down.
That's
true. So it's where we may feel secure, but we may also feel insecure at times. So when you're reading it in the personality, it's not so much like, oh, this is definitely who you are, right? Or this is who you even feel very confident about who you are, because it could be the opposite. You could have someone with a moon in Gemini, and you might, think that, okay, this person would be very good with information and communication, and they are, but they may not see it that way, because it's where we also feel insecure at the same time. So it's this kind of feeling where it's like, we have the strength, but we have to nurture and care and protect for that side of ourselves for it to come out more.
That's true.
And then we get the healthier expressions of the moon sign placement. And a lot of times in readings, like, if I mention the moon placement, they'll be like, oh, I'm like the opposite. I'm not like that at all. Because there's that part that feels very insecure about it. But then when you look at their life objectively, because they're, let's say, they're also secure about it, but because there's insecurity about it at times, that's a side that slowly, they have to slowly develop, but they do develop through time, and then it becomes more and more stronger, right? The more we protect for that self. So then
I would like to ask you one question. Like you told, like, Gemini moon, Gemini is a dual sign, so moon can always have a unstable kind of feeling when moon. Can you please tell us something about, which sign, when moon will be in different signs, so which sign can be more effective, like that? We cannot say like that, but still moon likes to be in particular sign or doesn't like to be, because in Vedic astrology we say moon is debilitated in Scorpio and exalted in Taurus. So, do you have any that kind of techniques in Western astrology also? Every astrology uses exaltation and debilitation, but other than that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do use the exaltation, debilitation, but we'll also use, dignity, for example. So the moon is very comfortable in Cancer. Obviously, it's at home there, right? So in dignity or domicile. And so that's because it's a very comfortable energy for the moon. And that's why Taurus is comfortable, because it's stable. So when you're dealing with something like the moon, which, like I said, can go up and down with the security, Taurus is great because it gives that security. It gives that stability, right?
Yes.
Whereas Scorpio is the opposite. So Scorpio wants to just bring everything to the surface, to bring everything, up, but the moon wants to protect. So the moon doesn't want to expose all those deep feelings and stuff. So you can pretty much apply it to, I do believe there's strength and also weakness for all the signs. And there's a little bit of a gray area outside of the, dignities and stuff. But you can kind of tell just by where it's at, So for example, like a moon in, I don't know, Leo, right? So that's going to have some challenges, some easy energy. The challenge will, of course, be to let that sun energy come out. But then there is that fun-loving and playful side, which comes a little bit easier. So it's usually a little bit of a mix, but definitely some signs are more difficult than others.
Moreover, this moon and Leo people, they will be having a very young looking. They have that young look always, isn't it? But their innermost, they'll be feeling the mind will be in the fire because Leo is the fire sign. I have seen them a lot.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And that's what you can kind of take into account too, is so like the fire signs are yang. So that might be a little more difficult for the moon, maybe more of the yang energies, and then easier for yin usually, generally. Yeah.
Okay. So this we were talking about sun and moon also. So how you feel about the sun and moon conjuncting? How can it how is it applicable to the mental health or psychological perspective? So because as I told you earlier, here sun and moon being in conjunction or being in quadrant signs, it is seen as a negative placement. So how Western astrology sees the conjunction of sun and moon, or sun being in quadrant with moon.
Yeah, so I see it a little bit differently from the West, again, more in terms of the yin-yang element.
Okay.
So where I believe, now it becomes very important to look at the lunar cycle, because now you're comparing the yin and the yang. And what is the relationship between the yin and the yang, right? So in a new moon, so we'll start with that, right? Now you have a combined energy between the conscious self and the subconscious, the moon, right? So the yang and the yin combined.
Okay.
So this would be more challenging if we think about it, especially when we start to consider like the sun's energy being so dominant, you wouldn't see the moon in the sky, right? So the moon is hidden, it's hidden away, and it's being drowned out by the sun's energy. So this person might have a harder time, basically being able to separate between the conscious self and the subconscious self, or between the mind and the feelings, right? And so it tends to be more blended and more merged. And that's where we get into like the ending of the cycle. In the beginning of the cycle, it's the lowest energy usually. So in transit, this would be the lowest energy of the cycle because you're starting a fresh new cycle. So it definitely, I would say, I would agree with that. It is more challenging in that placement. It's more inward in that sense. And then to look at it further for the other cycles, then let's take the opposite to that, which would be the full moon. And so the full moon here, now this person has a rift, a gap between the conscious and the subconscious self. So these become very evident for this person, because whereas the new moon person might get more confused about how they feel, because the conscious and the emotions are blended together, so you can't separate them. The full moon person will be able to separate them. The person usually would say, okay, this is how I feel, this is not how I feel. The challenge for the person, though, is that they're going to have to bring them together. So it's usually just a very, very big separation between the conscious self and the unconscious self. So they have to set that intention to intentionally bring in those feelings. I'm going to fly like buzzing around my head right now. Sorry. So that's going to help bring in that balance, because otherwise we may act completely on our emotions and feelings for the full moon person, which would be too much, right? Because it's separate. So it'd be too much emotions, feelings, or not enough. And this person might be more disconnected from their emotions and feelings versus the new moon person, right? And then you've got every stage in between there, right? So crescent phase would be more like new moon energy, but a little bit easier, let's say, because it forms a sextile relationship. The square is considered more challenging because it's more of a, not only a difference between feelings, but they're in conflict usually. So I know I feel this way, but it's very different from how I'm perceiving things or wanting to act in this situation. So both squares, the first quarter and the third quarter, would be more like a conflict. But then where I definitely agree with like what you said about the Vedic, so then you have the gibbous, so approaching the full moon, and the disseminating, which is waning from the full moon. These are trinal relationships, right? So this is where the sun and moon are usually in harmonious signs, the same element of the sign. So like, moon in Leo and sun in Sagittarius or something. And so there's a more synergy, an easier connection between the conscious and the unconscious. So depending on where that is, can give you a lot of information on how the inner and outer worlds interact, how the inner and outer personality interact.
Personally, in my life, I have seen when the full moon comes, especially if it is in the 6th house, I'll definitely have physical issues. So I watch out for the full moon. If it is happening in the 6th house of my parents or my children, I'll be ready to go to the hospital. I have experienced that a lot. Like the mind will give us the signals that, this is going to come. I have seen that a lot. So, other than that, what all things you have used in your personal life to strengthen your mind? If you don't mind, you can share with us like how you have used this energy like in your life.
Hey Jay, it looks like I lost the connection there for a little bit and it was cutting out. I'm sorry, what was the last question?
I was asking like, since we know like this moon, when moon is in this phase, these things can come up. Like, have you ever used this in your personal life to change something? Because I find it very helpful. Because my parents are aged, I mean, they are old people. So if they get any physical issues, they will get worried a lot. So I tell them, like, this is just due to the new moon, or this is just due to the full moon. So they find themselves, at peace. If I hadn't known that, they would have been very upset and worried. So likewise, have you ever taken the advantage of this information in your personal life? If you like to share, you can share. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. So from the birth charts, so a lot of what I do now is with the transits because I understand my birth chart. But obviously the birth chart's super helpful, right? So
that's
so
true.
looking at the relationship between those two, yeah. So for me, it's the full moon energy. So for me, I have to be more mindful of how I'm feeling, because otherwise I can be disconnected from my feelings, or I might just start acting impulsively on a feeling or something. So that knowledge in and of itself helps me become more aware of my feelings and to try to bring the two together, in some way, become more conscious of my feelings and vice versa,
That's true.
But in transit, it's very helpful as well, like you were saying. So especially which house it's happening in my own personal chart. But usually for the ending phase of the cycle, so before a new moon, I do try to take some alone time, some space. It's about clearing sort of energy. The new moon, just sit with the energy, see what new arises. And then as we start to build more momentum in the lunar cycle, doing more physical types of activities, things that would require more energy or more intention or more clarity, because like the full moon can give you that kind of clarity on what needs to shift and change, at certain times. So yeah, definitely with the transits. Yeah.
So, would you like to share something other than this from the horoscope, like, your personal findings or something like that?
Personal findings. So for me, it's the moon in Leo. So I have to let that inner child out.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So whenever I feel good, it comes out more and more humorous
Oh,
and
you look
fun.
very handsome, I was thinking, oh,
Oh,
he looks
thank you.
very handsome. Many of people, you will be having a lot of, I mean, that youth energy will be always there. My father's moon in Leo, see, so he looks very, looks are very young, like young looking man he is. The
Yeah.
women also, they will be very adventurous, they will be fun loving. That's really great to have moon in Leo.
Yeah.
And uh, I hope my viewers got a different kind of astrology, because Indian viewers are mostly addicted to Vedic astrology, but they, I'm sure, like, even if there are many people are Vedic astrologers here, I'm sure many people have started as Western astrologers, because Western astrology has a very easy approach, very understandable approach. So I hope my viewers got that point today, and it has helped them a lot. And thank you, Athen, for coming to my channel. I hope you will come back again and again. And I'll give your website link and YouTube link and everything in the below description box. And if anyone would like to take a consultation with Athen, you can contact him. And thanks a lot for coming. Please come back to my channel again. This is the first session. I hope you'll be coming back again and again.
I'd love to, Jay. Thank you again. It's been great.